So I promised you it, and here it is. Here's another story. The story took place maybe about 6, 7 years ago, and it it took place in by far one of the most famous places in New England, and possibly in the United States. So my story begins on a typical boring Saturday night. At the time, I had founded the Massachusetts Paranormal Research Society. We were 4 members strong, and not that big, but we were looking for something that we wanted to investigate that night, and we heard hundreds and hundreds of stories about the Bridgewater Triangle. If you don't know what the Bridgewater Triangle is, a simple Google search will show you hundreds of stories and even videos and movies about it. The Bridgewater Triangle surrounds towns Berkeley, Freetown, Rehoboth, Bridgewater, and obviously a couple others. And the main center is the forest itself. That there's been hundreds of reported sites of Bigfoot, ghosts, huge snakes, devil dogs, government cover-ups. You name it, this place actually has it. Any amateur paranormal investigator, any I'm not going to give you a history lesson or anything. If you want to know anything about the Bridgewater Triangle, just go to Google and put in Bridgewater Triangle, and hundreds of stories are going to come up, and YouTube videos. Yeah, there's been a documentary on it. I mean, you name it. Everyone in the New England area knows of the Bridgewater Triangle. I've heard stories of it. Back about 6 years ago, a couple of my friends wanted to investigate the forest itself in Bridgewater, where there's been hundreds of stories again. So we didn't know much on how to get into the forest, except for a Google map we had, and we had printed it out, and we kind of found an area that we thought could get us into the forest. So we stopped at the Bridgewater police station, and we did inform an officer at the desk that we were going into the forest, and he wasn't hesitant at all. He just said, go ahead. But we thought, hey, if something was to happen, the police would know we're there. So we found an old road that we thought would lead us into the forest, and we parked our car next to what it looked like was a watershed or something. I don't remember much. So we kind of walked around the shed, and then we found a trail. So we all started walking down the trail. It was me and three other guys, and one of my investigators' EMF detector started screaming. It was actually a gauge meter, and if anybody owns one of these, when it starts going off, it is loud. And the needle was all the way to 10 milligauss. And all of a sudden it died. And we took the battery out, replaced it, and it was just completely dead. Luckily I had another EMF detector with me, a more expensive one, and I started doing circles for EMF, and there was nothing, not even a spike. So we kind of put this behind us. Maybe it was a faulty device or something. So we started walking a little bit further in, and we walked about 10 minutes, and in the distance we heard what sounded like a metal baseball bat being hit up against a tree. And one of my investigators said, "What the hell is that?" And we turned, and it looked like a candle floating in the distance. That's the only way I can explain it. It didn't look like somebody was holding or walking. It kind of looked like it was floating in the air. This little light being, way into the distance. So one of my investigators was trying to record this on our old digital camera, but we can't get anything because it's dark out. So we just continued on, and we're walking down this one trail, and we come to what it looks like a fork in the road, and we decided to take one of the trails that looked a little bit more lit up because of the moon, instead of going down the darker trail. And mind you, we have flashlights, but they're not really doing us justice at this point. they're just letting up maybe 10 feet in front of us. So we head down this trail, and we heard again in the distance the baseball bat again, but this time it was coming from our left-hand side instead of what it was coming from before. And again, it was 5 to 6 hits, what it sounded like. And this time we didn't see the light or anything. We just heard that and it stopped. We're thinking somebody's messing with us. You know, maybe there's some kids in here messing with us or something. So we just completely ignored it and started to walk down that trail again. And we come to an opening. I said, you know, why don't we do some EVP, an EVP recording. And I said, okay. So we sat down and we all went quiet. And I'm holding the recorder in my hand. I said, is there anybody here that would like to speak with us? And all of a sudden, my recorder does this horrible screeching sound and stops working. The only way I can explain the sound to you is as if you hold two walkie-talkies together. That's the only way I can explain the sound. And it stopped working. Thinking this is, you know, another device faulty or something, I replace the batteries. It turns on just fine, and I start recording again. And I go to play it back, and before the said screech, sounded to me like a growl, and then the loud screech, and it stopped. And after that, whatever I recorded was not recorded. It was complete silence. You know, we kind of put it past us. You know, again, we're thinking maybe this is a faulty equipment. You know, it was very humid out, so maybe we thought that the humidity got to our our equipment. So I put it back in my pocket. We stand up, and we go back down the trail that we had previously walked from, and it's gone. The trail's gone. There's trees were there, what we thought was trail. I'm thinking in my head, for some reason we got turned around. Maybe we came from that way, but there's no trail there. There was another trail on our right-hand side, so we had walked in. There's another trail right there. I'm thinking, okay, maybe we got turned around or something. You know, so everybody's kind of like, no, there was a trail there. No, we got turned around. Me being, me being myself. So I said, let's go down this trail. We stopped walking down that trail, and the more I'm walking down, things look a lot different than it was previously. You know, trees look different, and again, I'm really good with direction. You know, I fairly know my way around if I get lost. So I'm, in my head, I'm thinking, we definitely got turned around or something, but we continue on. We come back to another opening, and we're thinking, okay, there's a trail right there. So we start heading towards that trail, and all of a sudden we hear far into the distance what sounded like people laughing, and it sounded like a group of people laughing. We're thinking, hey, maybe there's a kids, out partying or something, or having a campfire or something. This is good. We'll say we got lost and ask them, the easier way out. We start heading towards the sound of this said laughing, and it's getting further and further away from us. The closer we get, the further it sounds. The further the sound is traveling. And all of a sudden, the sound's on our left-hand side. Then the sound is on our right-hand side. The sound is on the back of us. And this is happening within the 10 minutes. I'm usually a calm and collected person. I'm starting to freak out. What is going on? Okay, let's put this together. Maybe because it's the forest, sound is traveling, and okay, yeah, that's it. We're all like, okay, yeah, that must be it. So again, we start heading towards the sound. The sound's a mile down that way now. It's completely gone. We're all scratching our heads. I'm starting to freak out. I said, let's head back down the trail, and we'll go back the other way, and we'll just leave. We start heading down the trail, and we come to the opening. The trail's gone. The trail that we just came from is now gone. There's trees. And I'm starting to get goosebumps. There's trees. Something is messing with us. There has to be people. I'm like, I know the trail's right there. I remember the trail's right there. I go out to it. There's trees. It's just miles and miles of what looks like bushes. I said, this is impossible. This is impossible. Something's turning us around. Now, if you read into any of the stories after this or before this, you'll read about puckawudgies and demon dogs and Bigfoot, Thunderbirds, and government cover-ups. There's so many stories coming from this. There's 100 thoughts going through our head right now. Let's head back down that trail. I said, if we head back down that trail, we're going to get lost. I said, we have to head back down that trail. That's the only way. If we travel through those woods, who knows where we're going to end up. We open up our map and we're looking, we're thinking, okay, maybe, we kind of get an idea where we were in the forest. We are further in than we thought, from what we thought. I have a compass. Again, I'm very, very good with direction. And my compass is pointing west when I know we're heading north because of the North Star. I'm armed with all these things, and the compass all of a sudden clicks. The arrow turns down. Now it's south. And then it goes up to north. Then it goes down to west. Then it goes to the east. It's moving by itself, and not in a casual way where it's just kind of, what a normal compass does. It's moving by itself like a clock. And I'm like, I told my friend, try to record this on his digital camera. So I grabbed the digital camera, and we're trying to take a video of it, and the digital camera just shuts off. And when you try to replace the batteries, it will not turn back on. All the equipment is dead now. All the equipment. Our cell phones, no reception. We're completely freaking out at this point. But I said, we have to continue on. We have to find a way out. Let's head back down that trail that we had previously came. So we head back down the trail that we had just come from. We start heading down the trail, and we start hearing the laughter again. And the laughter has become from an innocent group of people to more mischief, malevolent, if you will. It's kind of like a group of cackling. It's the only way I can explain it to you. And I'm kicking myself in the butt for one. I'm like, I could get this on recording. I wish we had brought a camera with us, a video camera. We could do all this on camera, but we didn't. So, I'm thinking, so I think I'm trying to calm myself down at the time, and everybody else said, it's got to be people messing with us. So let's do the same back. I said, stop making howling noises. And I said, everybody's freaking out, but we start doing it. I'll never forget the feeling that we got after we were all doing this for like a minute or so. The whole entire forest sounded like it just went silent. No wind. The laughter was gone. There's no movement of the trees. Nothing. And in the distance, we heard a howl. It sounded like something was mocking us. So I said, it's kids. So let's head towards them. We start heading towards the sound of where the howling is coming from. And we come to an opening, and there's old campfire, and there is 2 tents, but the tents are obviously old and ragged and ripped apart, and just, there's a backpack that had been, it just looked old. And I remember my friend saying to me, I know this tent, my dad has one. These tents were made in the 70s. Just him saying that gave us the chill up our back. Why would somebody just leave their equipment here? Why would somebody just leave their tents here? And obviously, these tents had been there for a long time. I mean, the poles themselves were completely rusted. The campfire had the grass had grown through this campfire, you know. But I'm almost positive this is where the sound was coming from. It's the only way I can explain it. So we see another trail heading out. So we start heading towards that trail, and we're heading down the trail, and we hear what sounds like a tank driving through the forest. Not like actually the tank, but it sounded like something huge was walking through the forest. And I mean, it was huge. You hear the crashing of the trees, you hear the snapping of the branches, and it's getting closer to us. So we start walking as fast as we possibly can down this trail. And at this point, I think that we didn't care where we ended up as long as we got out of the forest, you know. Even if we were miles away from our car, we didn't care. We wanted out of this forest. So we ended up on an old dirt road. And I'm thinking this must be the dirt road that we drove in on, but there's no signs of any houses or anything. There's no signs of lights from buildings or anything. I said, we can pick to head down, to head right, or we can take the left. And we came up with something stupid, and we said left is luck. So we took a left. We started heading down this road, but there's no tire tracks, there's no four-wheeler tracks, nothing. It's just this old dirt road. And we come to a massive opening. It looked like was a field or something. So we're thinking, we could head out into this field and completely get lost, or we head back down to the road. So we start heading down the road, and at this time, I think we all started kind of calming down for some odd reason. And that sounds weird, but I don't think it was time for us to calm down yet because we needed to get out of this forest. So we start walking, and it's really quiet. We're all kind of talking. Maybe this will lead us out and everything. And my friend said he said, "Oh crap, where's my EMF detector?" I said, "What? I mean, didn't you I guess he had put it in his back pocket, and it was gone. It was missing." I said, "Great, we lost the EMF detector, whatever." So we started walking again. We kept on walking, and I remember we went by the trail that we actually had came out of to get into the road, and we passed it. So we started walking up, and we walked about for 5 minutes, and my friend grabbed me on my shoulder and he shook, and I said, "What?" And sitting on the side of the road was the EMF detector, and it looked like it had been ripped apart and completely just pulled apart, smashed, whatever you want to call it. That's it. That's the last straw. I'm like, we need to get out of here. I'm like, if something is going to, deliberately destroy one of our items, we need to get out of here. So our pace changed. We're no longer walking. We're kind of running, if you will. We finally come to an opening, and I remember there was 2 trails, and it was one opening, another opening, and we saw lights. And we're like, oh, that has to be a house, so we're gonna head off that way. Our attitudes now turn back to we're completely creeped out. I'm starting to get worried. I said we need to get out of here. So our pace changes from walking to almost running. We're running. We must have ran for 10 minutes. We finally come to an opening, and it's another opening for another trail. And I'm thinking we're going to get turned around again, but this is our only option. Let's head back down this trail. So we head back down the trail. And we're walking, and I remember hearing what sounded like something running I'm in the back. I remember it sounded like something ran past me in the back, and I felt a burning sensation on my back, and it was enough to kind of like startle me. And I said, "What the hell?" And I turned. I said, "Something, it felt like I hit thorns or something." And my friend lifted up my shirt, and on my back were 3 scratches. We were done. That was it. I was done. I said, we'd have to get out of here. So we start taking off down this trail. We're jogging, and we come to a fork. And I remember this fork. I said, this was the same fork that we had started out on. And we're all looking at each other, and at this point we're completely scared, to be honest with you. Like I said, I've never been afraid in my life, but if I was, this was it. This was it. I was completely afraid. And all of a sudden we heard the cackling again. But the cackling was coming maybe 10 feet away from us, and it sounded like something was walking towards us. So we turned around and started running back where we had walked down. We had to run that way, and we see the damn water. The shell. The shed we just had came from way earlier, where we started off from. We see our car. We walk around the shed, get in a car, and we leave the forest. To answer a couple questions before they even asked, what do I think we were dealing with? I don't know. The whole Puckawudgie thing comes into mind. They're known to trick people, and that's the only thing that I can think of was tricking us. What can turn a forest around? What can hide a trail from us, rather, and completely turn us around? I can honestly say that I don't think if we had made it out of that forest, I wouldn't be sitting here telling the story, and that's how scared I was. Everyone, I hope you liked my story. I'm gonna try to make a whole bunch more. I don't have much time, but I'll get to them. And again, they just get creepier.